This video considers the concept of simulacra and its impact on Hollywood cinema. There is discussion and spoilers with the, as of right now, recently released Solo, Infinity War and Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom films. Some of the clips are of higher rated films and as such, parental discretion is advised. First recorded in the 16th century, the ideal of simulacrum was that of a representation of a person or a thing. By the 19th century, referred to a copy. This would be seen as a negative connotation whereby the simulacrum would be an inferior copy, lacking the elements or quality of the original. Media is full of representations and intertextuality, layers of meaning and influence. We have the idea that all art is theft. In acknowledgement of this, I feel it's important to explain that this video is heavily influenced by Joshua Rothman's piece in The New Yorker. I'll provide a link to this in the comments. I read Rothman's piece a few weeks ago and it came to mind as I was bored during my visit to the cinema to watch Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, the fifth film in the franchise, a film we will return to shortly. Before venturing to the Jurassic period, let's consider the recent release of Solo, a Star Wars story. Rumours are abound of production issues, an issue that also arose with Rogue One. Also, box office takings have been underwhelming. The film faces a twofold problem, the need to fill in blanks for fans and also the need to fill in the correct blanks. Disclaimer from me, I enjoyed the film, I saw it twice in the cinema and appreciated both visits. However, a colleague of mine was disappointed that Han's story without Jabba was not explained. This was a story that I felt was pretty clear from the original trilogy, but it does show that you can't please all of the people all of the time. Solo is the perfect summer spectacular. It's fun, there's plenty of action and the jokes mostly land, but will it be appreciated in 20 to 30 years? Will it even be remembered? Let's not forget that Star Wars itself was cribbed pretty extensively, and that isn't a bad thing in itself. As with everything, it depends on the application. Here lies the rub. How can any prequel story really engage us when we've seen it all before? We know who lives and who dies. We know their backstories to an extent, and we know their characters. Was Solo really necessary? I'm a huge fan of Donald Glover, and he is fantastic in the film, yet Donald and Alden are simulacra of Harrison and Billy Dee. Solo appears to be an opportunity to merely expand the canon with the introduction of auxiliary characters who then lead off to their own story arcs. Emilia Clarke's character shows great promise, and despite her limited screen time, I found her resolution pretty satisfactory. Her motives are interesting. I felt she had a brilliant turn towards a darker future out of a desire for power. My wife felt she did so out of fear for her own future and personal security. We decided both arguments were valid. But I think I prefer not to know the answers to the questions of her motivations. She doesn't need her own spin-off film to neatly tie up all these loose ends. With each film, we are shown the same characters go through the same set pieces with just a change of background. How many times will we see the Falcon arc through the air and slide through a tight spot while all the electrics go wrong? Can any of these sequences really surpass the original scenes in Empire, whereby Han and Leia fly, fight and flirt? I recalled Rothman's piece as I saw another velociraptor tiptoe across a laminate floor and try to open another handle. I felt boredom as I knew just what would happen. Part of what made the original Jurassic Park so good was not necessarily the script or special effects, but also the fact that it was the first time I'd seen it. Each time we see a simulacra of an older scene, we are asked to recall that piece. Perhaps each time we become a little bit more desensitised to that line, sound effect or visual trick. I felt Rogue One was a brilliant film, as a standalone film and a Star Wars film. K2SO was a superb addition to the cast in the now obligatory droid role.
Congratulations, you are being rescued.
I loved its dialogue, which was a nuanced comedic touch to a pretty grimdark film. Part of my enjoyment of K2SO was my intertextual knowledge of HK-47 from the Knights of the Old Republic game.
Indeed, I am most eager to engage in some unadulterated violence. At your command, of course, Master.
However, another witty, cynical droid may not evoke such feelings as just a callback to a callback. While Solo's L337 isn't particularly my cup of tea, at least they tried something a little bit different there. For me, The Last Jedi was the opposite. Too many plot inconsistencies, and it felt they cut too many threads that were set up in The Force Awakens. Many people who didn't like the film still appreciated the visual aspects of the brilliant hyperspeed jump sequence. Here we do have a callback to the original Star Wars with an appreciation of Eastern cinema.
列弾
Even with this knowledge, I still enjoyed the scene despite its destruction of Star Wars' verisimilitude. However, the scene will remain isolated, hopefully, as any further attempt to emulate this will just have a lesser impact. We've already seen this idea, we've already seen this visual effect. The best media takes elements from elsewhere. Arguably, it's impossible not to. What they do is build on these ideas, develop them further, and perhaps this is an element that is diminishing in modern Hollywood. One of the best films ever is John Carpenter's The Thing. It took an older story, first a book then a film, and developed its ideas. Contrast this to the modern remake, which offered less invention and more CGI. Partly, this is due to modern viewing habits, whereby most films are trying to hit that magic 12 rating. Yet what is lost in this duplication process? Are viewers really that impatient? Should we just turn off our brains and enjoy the spectacle? DC Suicide Squad suggests no. Reviews were less than positive, and it sharply contrasted with Marvel's far-reaching narrative plans. A menagerie of characters were introduced, each a simulacra of a Marvel equivalent, accompanied by a cool music choice. Instead of building characters, the audience were expected to use their own intertextual skills to identify our anti-hero, our comedian or clown. The result was indifference by the audience. Why should I care when Captain Kangaroo dies? If I know nothing about him, he's only had 4 lines. Even Leto's edgelord Joker struggled when compared to Ledger and Nicholson's recent-ish efforts. Yet Deadpool's success shows that there is a desire for adult-rated superheroes. A recent school trip to Infinity War provided a new experience for our own younger viewers. Several were genuinely shocked by the ending, where so many of the heroes died. As an old man, I know that Parker and his mates will return. I've read the comics, and I'm also familiar with Hollywood's desire for money. My intertextual knowledge knows these guys will be back. However, for the younger viewers, they haven't seen a bad ending before, especially not for a Hollywood film. This was their empire moment. It will be nigh impossible to replicate this for them, and anything that does probably won't have that impact. As we are offered an increasingly wide range of media forms, Hollywood is scared of the competition for your attention from the likes of Netflix and Fortnite. The result is a reliance on the familiar, which is a reliance on the simulacrum. We're seeing an increase in films where the pitch is, where it's like blank, but with blank. Even worse is the reliance on taking an old franchise and relaunching it, then running it into the ground. Even worse than that are tokenistic efforts at promoting equity in gender and race. I just hope that these prove to be a starting point for more representation on screen. Instead, my worry is that the relative failure of these films will be attributed to the stars rather than the derivative inferior nature of the filmmaking and storytelling.